You know, you read dozens of craft books, you know story structure, story theory pretty well, you can pinpoint ways to fix other stories that you think are pretty valid, and then you find out that you made those exact obvious mistakes in your own work and you didn't even realize it. This is clearly why we have beta readers and editors, because goddamn. Let's talk about how I screwed up Act 1 and how I'm fixing it. Alright, this video is going to be me literally talking you through what my Act 1 was, why it's bad, and how I plan to fix it. And I need to give credit where credit is due and say a good chunk of this content came from my editor, Neven, who is awesome. She is on Readsy, she's pricey, but worth it. Check her out if you're looking for an editor. So I'm going to start by giving a quick pitch of my book, just so you know what it's about, as it was in the first draft. It's about a girl named Lena, who is an incredible violinist. She meets Maisie, who's another girl at her school. They go to Italy, and she gets swept up into a heist to steal a famous violin. That's the basic gist of it. It's basically like Ocean's 11, but queer and in Italy. And so this is the outline as it was. We're jumping right into it. Scene 1. Lena meets Maisie when Maisie comes to buy answers from her to a music history exam. They go to the same university. Scene 2. Lena agrees to go to Riga, Latvia. So her mom's like, you're going to Latvia to see your aunt. She says, yes, she's going to focus on her violin training. Number 3. Lena ends up getting bumped from her flight and she is stranded in Rome. Number 4, she runs into Maisie, who offers to pay for her to fly to Riga if Lena will give a bag, like a suitcase full of money, to someone as a favor. And she also kind of blackmails Lena and is like, you really need to do this for me. Number 5, Lena gives the money to an Italian man at the Vatican. It's tense, but it's successful. They give up the suitcase. Number 6, Lena is very jet lagged, so she goes to sleep in the fancy hotel that Maisie bought, and she calls her family, and they're kind of like, why aren't you in Riga? And she kind of sorts that out. Number 7, Lena and Maisie go to dinner and flirt. Maisie invites Lena to go to Florence with her. Number 8, in Florence, they go to a museum. Lena sees the Italian man from the favor situation, and Maisie's like, it's a trap, this is bad. Number 9, they flee Florence and go to Tuscany. Number 10, Maisie explains what happened and basically what happened was, it ends up being something like, because Maisie and Lena were seen, they could be in danger for something from someone they don't really know. 11, they meet the rest of the crew, and 12, Maisie outlines the plan. Lena is going to apply for a position as a violinist for an upcoming concert that will feature this famous violin, and this will allow her to help them figure out who the Italian man is, what he wants, and how they go about not getting killed, basically. There's problems with this, and problems with the story as I wrote it in Act 1. Problem number 1. It's not actually a heist until the midpoint. You didn't see that in the outline because I wasn't going to outline all the way to the midpoint, but they don't say, we need to steal that violin until the midpoint. I had this idea that the first half would be sort of an investigation and the second half would be the heist, and it was all innovative, like matching the crime genre with the adventure heist. And unsurprisingly, it didn't work. Jackie, my beta reader, loved the book until about chapter 5, like number 5 on the list, where they do the favor. And then she loved it again from chapter 6 on, once the heist was well established. In between those two parts, those genuine chapters or so that she did not like, she left a lot of comments like, I wasn't sure what the threat was. There aren't any real stakes right now. I don't understand what they're doing. There's no clear plan, and it seems like there's activity for the sake of activity. Yeah, not things you want to hear, but extremely valid things. So lesson number 1, anytime you're like, I'm innovating in the genre, and you haven't, gotten a book to a really, like a 4th draft, maybe, like a refined state yet, you're probably writing something shitty. That should just be the rule of thumb, that anytime someone's like, I'm innovating in the genre, it's like, actually what you're writing is bad. Most likely. Number 2, learning from that lesson. The motivation was unclear, and it kind of screwed up the story question and the premise of the novel, because what this meant was the first bit of Act 2 wasn't the promise of the premise. It was this weird directionless investigation that didn't really have a goal. Yep, it's fine. It's so fine. She gave me feedback saying, hey, here's the formula for a heist. And it was the only feedback I got when she was like, this is the formula for a heist, like, watch this video. That stung. Not because she was wrong, because she was very right, but because I know how to write a heist. I know the formula. I watched that video. I watched Brandon Sanderson's video. I watched all of these articles about it. I've even written a novella for a heist that follows that formula to a T, and I did it explicitly, and it was part of because I wrote that novella heist, and I was like, I like this format a lot. This is such a cool format. It's like such an easy plot structure to kind of follow. Like, how cool. I'll just apply that to a book. And then it was like, crap, how did I mess up something that I actually know how to do and not realize that I messed it up? All right, problem number 2 with the outline, as I showed you, is that the story actually starts twice. After number 5 on the list, when they complete the favor, she does the favor for them, every external A-story thread that I had created in the first 5 scenes is wrapped up at the end of that scene number 5. Maisie literally tells Lena she can go. Maisie tells Lena there's no more danger. We're not doing anything illegal anymore. The tension fizzles, and I literally have her say, yeah, we're fine. Nothing bad is going to happen anymore. There's no more goal. We're literally stranded in the middle of space until the end of the trap at the end of point 8. Number 3, the actual story premise, the momentum starting. It comes way too late. It should be in the first 25 pages. It's in chapter 15. What my editor said was there are too many events that disrupt the status quo or pull at Lena, my main character. It's not clear what actually starts the story. It's not clear where the story starts. It can confuse the reader and make it feel like the story is starting and restarting. Number 4, there's a lot of conveniences. Lena gets miraculously, randomly bumped from her flight. Maisie's randomly at the airport at the exact same time Lena is landing. The job position is totally perfect for Lena, and look here, it's just there. Oh, pops out of midair. We can use her. Yeah, truly terrible with the plot conveniences there. And then, number 5 is that trap that, starts the story. It's not really threatening, and it's not really a trap as it's written. It's very confusing. So after all that, clearly now I go cry in a corner, right? Yes. As I was writing up this out last night, I was like, oh God. So I took the feedback and I made some goals. Some goals for my Act 1, some goals for my opening that I need to accomplish. Number 1 is establish the premise, which is we are stealing this goddamn violin in the first 25 pages. Number 2 is the story needs to start once. Establish the goal, go after it. That is what we are doing. Number 3, I need to define the inciting incident and know what it is in my mind. Number 4, I need to turn the plot conveniences into a character's plan. I also know that trick. I've used it before of like if something is convenient, if something is random, just make it so another character's will or want made it happen, and then it's not random anymore. It's not a convenience. I knew that, and I had to wait for the editor to tell me that. It's like I could have figured that out, but I didn't. Number 5 is make the trap actually a trap. So establish the stakes extremely clearly, all of which is easier said than done. However, Shercy really helped me here. She offered 3 solutions to my beginning. Solution number 1. So again, we have the first scene where in the original Maisie is buying this test. So she says, when Maisie's buying the test, she's scouting Lena out because she needs someone to fulfill this position. Then bumps Lena off of her flight, pretends to casually run into her, and offers to help her, randomly by offering her the job, the internship flat out. Basically, from Lena's perspective, nothing has changed, but from Maisie's perspective, she is controlling these events all the way. Solution B was to end the first scene between Lena and Maisie with a job offer of come to Florence, do this internship, we'll pay, we'll put you up as long as you tell us, as long as you communicate to us about what's going on. And Lena would think it's a little bit, sus, but she would do it anyways for the money, and she would fly first class to Europe, and then maybe at some point, realize that it was illegal. And then the third option, she said, option C, is having Lena's goal be freedom. She stumbles into the heist, and she uses it to claim independence from her family. What Kirsty said was option C required a lot less revision. It's actually kind of what I was going for initially, but she did point out that it was less interesting. And I got to a point where I agreed with her. Anyways, so I had her three options, and I knew that I didn't want to just randomly pick one. That didn't seem the way to go. I wanted to sort of think things through. What made sense to me was to say, okay, I know the big problems, and my big goals for this revision that I'm going to be working on next are like fix the promise, progress, payoff issues that she talked about. So fix Act 1 and then, cascading down, and fix Lena's character arc, work on her character arc and make it stronger. And so I said, okay, obviously like the plot activities should be tied to the character arc. So let's do that. So I was all about aligning Lena's character arc through the whole series with the external events. So I started brainstorming off of Kirsty's solutions. And what I did was I actually started with the climax of the novel. Right now in this manuscript, what does Lena do at the climax? What are her big actions? And the reason I started there is because, man, a heist is a very difficult thing to replot. So I'm sure I will edit it. I'll change it. I'll make it stronger. But I don't think I can change too many of the gigantic elements of it. So the question is, what were her big actions at the end? And where would she have to start for those actions at the end to show growth? Number one is her starting off being kind of selfish and pursuing music and the violin kind of for the wrong reasons, thinking life is a zero-sum game, wants to kind of rise to the top, and then at the end being, more selfless and more invested in others and really discovering kind of, what music means to her. There are bits of this in the actual book, and I'm going to do a full video in the same style and character because there's a lot to talk about there. And then the second option that I came up with was she starts out being kind of like an extreme rule follower of everything must be so. Everything, I need to fulfill these expectations. She's an extreme overachiever who is we are doing things by the book, and doing things by the book will lead to success. To being more unconforming and more risk-taking. And then my third option that I came up with was going from passive to active. So passive, she lets others make decisions for her. She, is very much like a huge people pleaser, to active being she makes decisions on her own. And I worked out what the story would look like for all of those different character arc directions. So, for example, the B version that Kirsty suggested of her being offered the job straight outright in exchange for a lot of money would go really well with this selfish, wrong reasons to right reasons character arc, where she would say, damn what my family thinks, damn what I'm supposed to do. She would be running a cheating scheme. She would be out to everyone. She would, go after that job and be like, I want this money, hustle, hustle, hustle. I don't care if it's illegal. The rule stickler would never run a cheating scheme. She would do what was expected with her, and she would not go off with someone she hardly knows, even if she wanted to. And so she would have to be somehow roped, forced into it. And then the passive person would align more with option C, oh, my goal is freedom, I kind of want to get away, and just kind of stumbling into things and then trying to use it to claim her independence. I'd like to note that all of these characters have the same deep-seated misbelief pretty much. I've laid it out to make the differences seem as obvious as possible in what I'm calling them, like my selfish, my rule follower, and my passive. But those differences in actuality and how they play out are actually quite subtle, because the problem is there's little bits of all of those in there now, and I kind of have to choose one. So the characters that I'm talking about, they all want the same thing. They have the exact same backstory, the exact same history, and the same like main misbelief. It's just kind of a tweak in the worldview that I'm talking about and the character arc that I'm going to be showing. A tweak in like their confidence, their likability that could produce hugely different stories. So I decided right off the bat I didn't want to write about a passive character. That character is no match for Maisie, so bye-bye. I was torn between the other two though. I worked out some of the details for all of the scenarios, like how literally the rest of the plot would play out for each of these characters, and basically, what would have to happen, what would have to change, what would have to be narrowed in on for each of them. And then I wrote a list of what I liked about my original idea. And my list consisted of things like swept away, breathless, danger, fish out of water equals funny, all sorts of things. And then I wrote a pro-con list, and I will put my pro-con list also up here. For a lot of reasons, I couldn't find a way to give the heist the same life-death stakes in the selfish version. I spent like a long time thinking about it and a lot of hours, and even as I was writing out the script for this video, I was like, but could I? And something about it just doesn't feel right. The selfish version would have a much bigger twist at the end. It would even be maybe a bit easier to explain, but it kind of ruined the mentorship theme that I really like. Also, I kind of feel like the morality issue is not the thing I'm most interested in. The rules version is initially a lot more like what I imagined, and in my imagination, what I'm able to figure out in how it would work is that it would have higher stakes, there would be more tension, it would be more personal, and it would give the characters absolutely no option to walk away. And I really, really like that. But there is a logical fallacy in that version that I'd have to work to remove, and honestly, there still might be questions. There might need to be a little bit more suspension of disbelief, but it's not the worst, and I can mitigate that. It was in this whole process that I learned what kill your darlings meant. I literally kept hemming and hawing, like, oh, but I don't want to do the rule follower one because I love that she's cheating. And like, oh, but if I did that, I'd have to get rid of this scene. And if I did that, I'd have to get rid of that scene. I ended up getting really caught up in the fact that I have Lena and Maisie eat dinner at, I think it's called La Roma Sparita. It's this excellent restaurant in Rome. If you go, I highly recommend. And in the rules version that I had mapped out, it wouldn't make sense for them to have dinner there. And I was like, we cannot do this version because they can't have dinner at the restaurant. And I really wanted to set a scene there. And then I realized I could just move the restaurant to Florence. It's my world. It's my book. I can move that restaurant wherever I want. And goodness gracious. But it's been a lot of thinking. Like a lot of that, of me being like, oh my god, just kill your darlings, or just move it, like, you're not blocked. Anyways, I'm now rambling. Honestly, when it comes to what I'm excited about writing, I can see the good story in the selfish version, but Lena joining willingly to this heist was not originally what I imagined. It was the randomness of being pulled into a crime that brought me to this idea in the first place. I might change my mind at some point down the road. If an editor comes in, it might change. It could change. It very possibly could change. But I ended up deciding on going with the rule following to unconforming version of my story. All that being said, I had to make that decision first, and then I could go and re-edit the opening to make it work. So let me kind of explain what the new outline is and why it's better. We're getting to the end of this video, I swear. There's an opening scene. I'm not 100% sure what it is yet. I have thoughts, but there's an opening scene. Scene number 2 is Maisie shows up and she offers Lena this internship. She says, I need someone to come here and do this. I'll pay you. There's no cheating scheme. Lena is not cheating. She is a strict rule follower. In scene number 3, Lena goes home. She proposes it to her family. They say, no, you're supposed to visit your aunt. So she refuses the internship. In scene number 4, Lena gets bumped from her flight. Maisie shows up and convinces her to at least help her with an errand. There was going to be blackmail there. It can't be exactly as it originally was, but I'm going to fill it in and make it happen. There's some questions, like how did she make her do it? Figure that out later. Number 5, while on this errand, they fall into a trap set by the antagonist. The antagonist threatens them specifically and explicitly. Number 6, as they escape, Maisie is like, I think we're going to have to steal this famous violin, otherwise we're going to be murdered. And then 7, commence heist planning, meeting the crew, etc. You'll notice that in this version, I'm revealing the premise at step 6 versus 15, which is great. But if you're listening to that and thinking, WTF, yep, I know it seems a little bit random, and all the plotty backstory I didn't mention explains logically why all of that is a thing and why they have to steal a violin in order to not get murdered. It's not important for the purposes of this video. Let's just say Maisie has a history with this violin. So why is this better? Let's talk about it. Number 1, I like it better because it features a refusal of the call. This wasn't in Sheristy's original, recommendations, but I like her refusing the call. You know, she's afraid to go against others' expectations. She's afraid to break rules, which, if you're thinking to yourself, you just said you don't want to write a passive character, not wanting to follow the rules strictly doesn't make her passive. I'm thinking kind of a Hermione Granger pre-troll vibe that I'm really enjoying. So her wanting to try for the internship and then refusing it because it's outside of the box that she's had set up for her, it sets her up as a before character very, very nicely. Number 2, nothing is convenient anymore. Maisie and the crew have set everything up. So even though the exact same events will happen, Lena will be booked for her flight, she'll run into Maisie, she'll do this internship, they'll do the favor, yada, yada, yada. It's all been planned in advance. Nothing is a coincidence. Number 3, all of my beta readers' comments about, I don't know what the threat is, there are no real stakes, I don't get it, hopefully they're going to be gone. I established the stakes right off the bat in that scene number 5 with the antagonist and the trap. I'm going to have the antagonist threaten them explicitly, making it extremely clear exactly what they have to do. And then number 4 is hopefully the story question is super strong, super soon. And the story question being basically how will they not get murdered? And or how will they steal this violin? Which basically are meant to be the same thing. So there's still some ironing out to do, but it is a lot better. Hopefully. Literally talking you through everything I've been doing the past couple of months on my book and on structuring it. It felt like a lot of talking. I hope some of it came out as coherent. If you like this kind of content, give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, you can subscribe. I love having you here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you